It's the start of one of the biggest driver transfers in F1 history, as Lewis Hamilton touches down in Maranello for his first day as a Ferrari driver, with the first images of his arrival becoming the most liked social media posts in the sport's history. Lewis spent today driving a Ferrari for the first time, and he spent the morning touring around the Ferrari test track in an SF23 via the sports testing of previous machinery rules. With me to break down the action and what to expect in 2025 and beyond are Jake Boxall-Legge and Filip Cleeren. How are you doing, guys?
Very well, thanks for having me, Ben.
No problem.
Yeah,
JV,
very good, thank you. I'm sure we're all here to talk about the very exciting news about Oliver Turvey joining Williams. So, let's get into it.
I don't know about you guys, but for me, it feels like the start of the season. I think we've had the winter, and seeing that car go around on track today felt like the first moment. F1 is back. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, same really. I mean, we've been talking about Lewis joining Ferrari for literally a year now, and it really finally starts to feel real once you see him don that red suit and get out on track in Maranello. It feels a bit like, a state visit, the way he was received there. I got to meet the CEO, John Alcan, who was obviously instrumental in getting him there, meeting Piero Ferrari, and then that, I guess, instantly classic photo shoot in front of Enzo Ferrari's farmhouse with Lewis just with his inimitable sartorial style, dressed to a T. It looked fantastic. Obviously, people are looking into the number of windows, and there's an open window. Does that mean, is that foreshadowing his 8th world title?
Yeah, there were seven windows, wasn't there? Just to clarify.
7 windows and a door. So that's,
and the door was open. Something.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was great. I thought, this was Ferrari's big moment, and I think they nailed it. It was obviously well choreographed throughout the 3 days that he's been there now, starting with the photo shoots and meetings, and then going into the work behind the scenes, and now on track on the Wednesday morning. And you look at what people are saying that we're there for the Michael Schumacher days. They are saying they've never seen a reception like it, really. It was extremely cold and wet out there in Maranello. It's just hundreds of fans lining the track all morning at Maranello, braving the conditions, and they got to see Lewis out there. It was, well done to Ferrari. I think it looked really good.
Yeah, I think so too. It was almost like a whiff of nostalgia, wasn't it? The way that they were dropping the images and the way they were shot. Almost like the car pulling out the garage was filmed on an iPhone or whatever it was. And I don't know, it just felt kind of retro, but they were leaning into that heritage quite strongly. And for me, JBL, I don't know, it just feels like a perfect fit. My social media has just been full up with the retweets of the images and the video, and it just feels right at this moment in time.
Yeah, definitely. And as Phil has already said, it feels like the culmination of the past year, all of the excitement, the photoshops of seeing Lewis Hamilton in red overalls. And at last we get to see it in the flesh. It does feel like that statement. Every now and again we have, one of the sport's most celebrated champions, athletes, join Ferrari. It always feels like such a sort of statement. And it's going to be so exciting just to see how he gets on. Obviously, the time at Mercedes, and I'm sure we'll get into this in a little bit, the time at Mercedes sort of came to an end, and it felt like a little bit of a damp squib, really, the ending. And so there's this chance now for him to come into the team and kind of bring this aura, bring this sort of passion and fire to the fore. And I think we're all looking forward to seeing that, because what is Formula One without those things, without those constituent elements? It's I think exciting for everybody. Even if you're not a Lewis Hamilton fan, I think you're kind of watching with a keen eye on it.
Now, we mentioned this at the top of the pod, the fact that he's left. He left Mercedes, and it has felt like forever, the long goodbye. But in that time, there's been a lot of talk about how difficult he's going to find it adjusting to the culture, the language barrier. How do you guys think that he's going to get on at Ferrari? Do you think that it's going to be a bit of a shock culturally?
Well, I think inevitably it will be, but Lewis Hamilton wouldn't be Lewis Hamilton if he wasn't ultimately prepared for that. I'm sure he's been in the books and on Duolingo and what have you, studying Italian for the past few months, and I think you saw that as well when he went out on track. He went off to a corner in a support vehicle this morning, just greeting the fans. I'm sure he sprinkled a few words of Italian in there. I think he understands the power of the Tifosi. He says he's always dreamed of driving in red, hasn't he? So I'm sure he knows what that means, and he knows how important the connection is with the fans and with the Italian culture. So I'm sure he will adjust, because this is what he's been prepared for.
Yeah, he is a quick learner. He taught himself to unicycle in a couple of hours, didn't he? I don't know if you know that story, when Nico Rosberg was cycling when they were doing their karting days, and Lewis thought he'd have a go and sort of mastered it rather quickly. So, he has a habit of picking stuff up rather quickly. I think one thing for me which is interesting is how he's sort of put this team together, the team in the background. There's various different parties that have come in, people that he knows and trusts, and I think one of the pieces we saw this week was Angela Cullen's return. It's someone that he can trust, he has a good relationship with, and that's the sort of thing he needs to do, right, isn't it? Just to keep these, familiar faces around him as he goes into an environment where he's not so sure, a bit uncertain, but he's got those key figures that he can trust and use as a soundboard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to have, I guess, that support network as a driver, because when the car is new, when the environment is new, even the fan base is new, and it's going to be very, very different for him to kind of acclimatize to that. Having people that you're familiar with, it's kind of like going into a swimming pool with an armband. It helps you stay afloat, really, and that's the important thing. Obviously, Mark Hines has been part of his management team for a while now. That Angela Cullen's coming back, that's some familiarity there. It's just things that you don't have to worry about. If you're going in completely new, you're going to have to learn a car, you're going to have to learn how a team works, yada, yada, yada. If you've got a sense of familiarity, it's something off your mind, isn't it?
Well, this is something that I was going to ask you, JBL. What are the performance hurdles that he's going to face? He's had so much experience in that Mercedes, only driven Mercedes-powered car. How different is it going to be getting in a Ferrari?
I think there's a few differences that he's going to have to spend, this Fiorano test and when he's running at Barcelona just getting used to. As you say, he's been with Mercedes Power since 2007. Of course, there was the change to the V6 turbo hybrid formula, but he's only driven with that powertrain in Formula One since they came in 2014. So there's power delivery that he's going to have to get used to. It's ultimately how it feels to drive, kind of getting a sense of where the torque is, getting a sense of how much you can push the throttle at any given point. Even in the corners, you've got to balance your power, otherwise you're going to spin off if you put a little bit too much in. There's the steering wheel as well, and I was kind of thinking about this example the other day. If you're like, I don't know, an Xbox player or something like that, that you've got an A, B, and an X and a Y button. Then if you pick up a Nintendo Switch, the buttons they have the same letters, but they're in different places, and it's just like you're going to press the wrong one if there's a command on the screen that tells you to do that. And so I think that's probably the easiest way of explaining that, like knowing where the DRS button is, for example. He's going to press something and it might be the water bottle, or it might be something completely different. So I'm sure there'll be a little bit of finger trouble at the start. But that's part of it.
So do you think do you think there will be some mistakes then at the start because of that learning that's going to take some time?
I think so, yeah. And that's all part of the process. We know he's had finger trouble before. Was it Baku 2021 that he pressed the magic button at the wrong time or didn't press it? I'm not saying that that's a precedent, but he's done it before and it might happen again. But on a sort of more serious note as well, there's going to be things for him to get his head around, like tyre management characteristics, for example. At Mercedes, particularly with the W15, there was this all-year problem of the car overworking its rear tyres, and so it gets to a point in the race where the rear grip isn't there, and so Hamilton's having to sort of corral the car into driving in a different way. In theory, if the Ferrari retains the same characteristics with tyre management as it did in 2024, then he shouldn't have to do too much of that, because it was very, very kind to the tyres allied to that, the cars have been very, very kind of benign handling, very, very compliant over curb strikes and that kind of thing. So he knows that he can push it and not have to worry about an unsettled rear at the other end of that. So in theory, there are things in the Ferrari that he should like characteristics wise, but it's getting used to them because there's probably 3 years of learning that he has to unlearn, and then get his head around the new characteristics. So I think there's quite a lot. Again, the Mercedes was very capricious last year, but if Ferrari does what it sets out to do with its new car, and try and get a little bit more quality pace out of it as well, then it should set him on a good trajectory, I think.
Phil, I was going to ask you about his time at Mercedes, and again we mentioned the fact that it was he'd handed his notice in and had a full year there of just going through the motions. Do you think that there's any part of that year that will inhibit him coming into this year? Do you think that because he had that season where he was comprehensively outqualified by George Russell, that it will be in the back of his mind? We had that quote from him, where he had mentioned that he hasn't got his speed anymore. Do you think that that's playing there as he comes into life at Ferrari, or has he disbanded that now and he's just fully focused on where he is?
I think it actually has potential to do the opposite, really. It will unshackle him, if anything, because, well, we know he hasn't suddenly lost his speed, so he clearly didn't get on with the Mercedes. They tried to make it more to his liking into 24, change the seating position and making several changes. It still was a car he wasn't comfortable with, especially over one lap, and a car that was really hard to keep in the right operating window. So I don't think he's going to take that with him. Instead, I think he's going to see this as a relief in a way, as a way to reset and forget about particularly the last 3 years at Mercedes with these cars. And this is a chance for him to show that, it's not him, it's the car. And again, as JBL said, he has every opportunity to find a car that will suit him better, but we won't know until he's driving it in anger. But there are, I think there are reasons to be optimistic if you're a Lewis fan. I mean, yes, he's not working with Pete Bonington anymore. He's trusted a long time race engineer of 12 years. That is going to be an adaptation with Riccardo Adami, but he's a 7-time world champion for a reason, and I'm sure he'll be up to speed in no time.
Okay, so one of the questions I'd like to ask you both is how you think he will stack up to Charles Leclerc. I thought it was interesting today, Ferrari putting out all those images of Lewis. I was thinking, I wonder what Charles Leclerc makes of this, seeing Lewis come into his team and very much take the limelight. How do you think that they will stack up against each other?
I think it's going to be, as I said earlier, it's going to be a learning curve for Hamilton, especially in the opening races. And so my initial thoughts are, if he doesn't quite have the confidence over a single lap, then versus one of the best qualifiers on the F1 grid, then Leclerc should, in theory, have that advantage to start with. But if Hamilton can get dialed into the car, I think over a race distance, he'll be pretty formidable if the car's good. And then he'll start to get a little bit closer to Leclerc. I think part of the growing process will be rebuilding that qualifying confidence. I think many times over 2024, we just saw him looking pretty despondent. He said he can't qualify anymore. He said he's just not that good over one lap anymore. But can you lose it that quickly? I think it's a good opportunity for him to show that it's not gone. It might take a bit of time to sort of build up to it, and he needs to give himself that time. But I think towards the end of the season, I'd have thought they should be pretty close.
Phil, do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, you say Charles Leclerc is one of the best qualifiers. Some argue that he's pound for pound the best qualifier in F1, and it is going to be a challenge if you look at Lewis's qualifying record in recent years. But again, is it the driver? Is it the car? Lewis will argue it's a car, and I don't think that many people will dispute that. So again, it comes down to how quickly can he find a groove with the Ferrari and turn it into a car that he enjoys driving and he can push over one lap. And, it starts from qualifying, doesn't it? It all starts from there. If you're qualifying up front, you give yourself way less to do over the race. So I think they'll be pretty closely matched. I don't see why not. But again, yeah, it depends on how quickly he can adapt to the Ferrari, and then I think you'll be able to be successful. As for Leclerc, I think you're right, Ben. It is an interesting dynamic, isn't it? Because Charles Leclerc is very much Ferrari's guy. He's part of the, I don't want to say part of the furniture, but he's sort of Ferrari's golden boy and has been. And it will be interesting to see how that dynamic works. They do get on very well, but yeah, is there room for two top dogs? Ben, I don't know. It will be interesting to see how that plays out. And again, that will all be dictated by the performance, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait for the start of the year. I think it's going to be very interesting. Ferrari, sort of, last couple of years have started with a strong car, haven't they? Strong base to work from. Assuming that the trend continues, do you think then that Lewis Hamilton could be a title contender for 2025, or is it too soon and that he should be looking for 26 onwards?
Well, it's that time of the year where Alex Albon is a title contender, isn't it? So it's the fun bit where we can speculate and theorize. So it will depend on how they get out of the blocks in Melbourne. But yeah, with this 2025 season, final year of the regulations, you've got to think that at least McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari will be there. Mercedes, looking at last year, probably have a bit more to prove than those three teams.
And Williams, according to you as well.
And Williams, indeed, yes. So my bold prediction, I don't remember what my prediction was last year. I think it was Tsunoda finishing 7th in every race or something. I think this one tops it just a bit. But no, it's I think Ferrari will be there because I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be. If you look at how they climbed out of their mid-season low last year, you rallied and were really strong towards the end again. They've had a winter to build on it, so they have to be in contention. I don't see how they couldn't be.
JBL, do you agree, or do you think that Lewis has too much of a mountain to climb to be a challenger next year, or this year, I should say, sorry?
Yeah, as Phil says, it's a case of whether Ferrari is in the mix or not, and we're not going to know this until the launch when we see the new car, but rumours are abound that Ferrari is going to switch its suspension component so that it should be switching to if rumours be believed, pull rod front and push rod rear suspension. Whether it will remains to be seen, but if Ferrari can get its head around that with regards to setup, and it can make the most of the car and start 2025 where it started 2024, then my head says yes, Hamilton could very well be a championship contender. My gut probably says no. I think there is a mountain to climb in the early season. I think it would be difficult to beat Leclerc at the start of the year, and then there's McLaren, and then there's Red Bull recovering, and other teams as well. But in theory, if the car's good and you can get on it off the bat, then yeah, why not? It'd be nice to see him in a championship battle again against some of the younger dogs, as it were.
Yeah, you've got some young guns coming through, and he's now 40 years old. It's going to be interesting all round, isn't it? I can't wait for the season to start. For me, as I said, it feels like it's already started this season, and can't wait to get going. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time. Lovely talking to you as always. Thanks very much for watching. Let us know in the comments what you've made of Hamilton's Ferrari move so far, and how do you think he'll fare for the prancing horse in 2025. If you like the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe as we are rapidly approaching the start to the new season. But for now, thanks for watching.